my parents grew up in the Depression, and like many Depression era survivors, wanted to make things available to their kids that they were denied. And one of those things was the chance to play music. And I only found out, even really in the last 10 years, that my parents both played instruments. They never told us this. My father played the trumpet, and only 10 years ago I happened to be visiting my elderly parents, and there was a photo on the wall I hadn't seen before of this bunch of young teenagers, and my mom said, "No, that's your dad with his trumpet." I said, "What do you mean with his trumpet?" He said, "Well, he played trumpet in a little band when he was in school." I said, "Well, you're kidding. You never told me this." And then I discovered in another room there was an old silver trombone. And I said, "Where did that come from?" He said, "Oh, that's your mother's." I said, "You're kidding. You know, where was it all the years I was growing up? How did I not know about it?" So anyway, they wanted all three of us kids to take music lessons. My older sister played the piano already. She was 2 years older than me. And I was maybe 5 years old, and started to show interest in my sister's practicing. I would hover around and watch what was going on, and my father noticed that I would start to correct her. I would say, "No, that's an E flat," or that's something. And then one day he noticed me calling out from the kitchen, "That's supposed to be a G," or something, you know, correcting her. And he said, "Okay, I think it's time for Gary to get music lessons." And discovered at that point that I had perfect pitch as well, which is one of those things that's, you know, some people are naturally born with, and doesn't really make a difference as whether you're going to be a successful musician or not. I know some people who have it who are very mediocre musicians, as well as many great musicians who don't have it. So I actually have decided it's sort of immaterial. It's just an interesting thing that happens to some people, and it happened to me. My sister already played the piano, so they wanted me to pick a different instrument. And at 5 years old, you don't even know what the instruments are, you know. And we lived in a fairly small town in Indiana, and the year was 1949. And turned out there was a lady in the town that played the marimba and the vibraphone and gave lessons. So my parents took me to meet her, and I don't recall this. My mother said at my first lesson that I refused to get off the chair. The teacher was trying to get me to, "Here, take the sticks, try it out, hit something, make the notes," and I wouldn't talk, wouldn't do anything. And finally the teacher told my mother, "You know, maybe he's too young, come back in a year or two and try again." And my mother said, as soon as I got home, I couldn't stop talking about it. And 2 weeks went by, and she said, "Okay, we'll go back." And this time I did play, and I remember the lesson, actually. I remember that one. The first piece I learned was "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." And that's one of the nice things about mallet instruments, is you can play a song immediately. You know, hand a kid a clarinet, you know, you can't even get a sound out of it, let alone find different notes to play. Guitar, same thing, you know, where do you put the fingers and the picking, and it hurts your fingers and everything. With marimba, vibraphone, oh, that's nice. The notes are just right there. You hit it with a stick and sounds great right away. So I was able to pick out this little song, and I just felt proud of myself. So I started taking lessons with this really wonderful teacher, it turned out. Her name was Evelyn Tucker. And she actually was one of the biggest dealers of mallet instruments in America. You know, the Musser Company, the Deegan Company, they were the two major companies at that time for making mallet instruments in America. They'd work out deals with teachers, you know, who had students, and they could sell the instruments to the students by dealing directly with the factory. And so Evelyn, she had at one point 60, 70 students, and each one of them had a marimba or a vibraphone or something. So she was selling a lot of instruments, it turned out, and was very charismatic. And she turned out to do a couple of great things for me, kind of in her naivete in a way. She herself was not an expert about harmony or improvisation or anything, but because there wasn't much written music for the marimba or the vibraphone at that time, we were using piano music, violin music, things that I could adapt, that we could adapt to the mallet instruments. And so you couldn't read it literally. You had to make adjustments here and there. And she would frequently get this piano sheet music of a song and say, okay, we need an ending here, make up something. Or we need an introduction, make up something here. Or here, this chord, it's a C chord, it's got these notes in it. And so she started actually teaching me music theory and started me on the basics of what improvising was like, unknowns to me. I mean, we were just making up bits and pieces of things, but it exposed me to the idea of making something up at the age of 6 or so as I was learning to play the thing. We moved away after a couple of years and to another town a couple hundred miles away, so that was the end of the lessons. But she had gotten me started very solidly. She had taught me how to play with 4 mallets, which became a trademark for me later in my career, and taught me how to read music and sort of introduced me to chord symbols and all this. So from then on, I was on my own.